You have a bit of a connection not only as a member of the legislature with this area, but you have some history if you go back to your Fort St. John days as a boy.
Well, yeah, I lived in Fort St. John during the 60s, and we would come down to the paradise of Clearbrook to visit my grandpa and grandma. And Grandpa would take us in his old station wagon Rambler over Mount Woodside into Harrison Hot Springs so that we could have a dip in the hot pool there. And on our way, we would go over Mount Woodside and notice the Doukhobor colony that was there. There were some, I'd have to say, tar paper shacks there up on the side of Woodside. And the story was that there were some Doukhobor men who had done things like burn down bridges and so on, who were in mountain prison. And their women would stand on a certain rock and signal to them from that rock. And so they lived there, and really I'd never seen tar paper shacks before, but they were really crude. And there were probably 30, 40, 50 people who lived there for a time. And so that's an early memory I have of Agassiz.
And what about your days, you were working for a while with the, well, now former Minister of Agriculture.
I worked for Harvey Schrader from 1984 to 1986, and Harvey was the Minister of Agriculture at the time. And I was working in Chilliwack, and one day he phoned me from Victoria and said, I have a form I have to fill out here. We have to name the SkyTrain cars, and there is a SkyTrain car for north of the river. What are we going to call it? And so we talked about it for a while and thought that we should call it the Spirit of Kent, because Kent referred to the whole area. And so he filled out the form, and we heard nothing more about it. Now, Harvey retired in 1986, and so I needed to find another job. And so I was looking for a job with Grace McCarthy, who names SkyTrain cars. So they fixed me up with ferrying Grace around in a car as she came out to name the SkyTrain car in this council chambers in Agassiz in, I think, 1985. So I drove her out to Agassiz. It was all fine and good. She went to the council chambers. The officials had set up a backdrop with a draping over it and so on. And so with great flair and fanfare, she unveiled the name of the SkyTrain car, the Spirit of Kent. And the council members were sitting there in the mayor, and they all said, no, we want the Spirit of Agassiz. They were all affronted. Of course, Grace backtracked and apologized and promised to fix it. And on the way home, she gave me a little talking to. She said, always consult before you make a decision like this. And then she hired me. So, it turned out to be all right. But it was a good lesson, well learned. And I always remember today as MLA to consult with my constituents before I make a decision.
Good advice. You're a historian, aren't you?
I am indeed. I studied in Cambridge in England. I studied the first Penitentiary Act in 1779, and it was a marvelous study. I wrote a book about the early prison and the beginnings of the prison, and so that was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life, to go and study over there.
Now, there's a theological angle to that, though, wasn't there?
There is, because when you think of the term penitentiary, you think of the root of the word being penitence, repentance, penance, things like that. And it turns out that we have a system that's based on repentance, and so the study was really the theological study of repentance in the 18th century that brought about the Penitentiary Act. It is really our entire system today, and we have many prisons in my riding. The entire system is a remorse-based system. It's a sorry system, and we still have that today, 250 years later, and it's amazing how little it has changed. The labels have changed, but the concepts under it have not changed in the past 250 years. It's a fascinating study.
So 2020 is a big year in the District of Kent, the 125th anniversary, and a lot of things are going on, a lot of fun activities.
And I'm going to be part of that as much as I can. I mean, I haven't grown up in Agassiz or anything, but I have been part of Agassiz now for about 6 years, quite intimately, and so I hope to be part of it. But I hope that everybody from near and far who come to the homecoming and to other events will have a great time, and together we will wish all Agassiz residents a very happy 125th anniversary.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.